July 1st, 2010, Huntsville, Texas, 6:17 p.m. A 28-year-old man takes his final breath on a cold metal table. Michael James Perry has just become another statistic in America's death penalty system. But his story isn't just about an execution, it's about a crime so brutal it shocked an entire state. 9 years earlier, two teenagers went on a killing spree that left 3 innocent people dead. Their motive? They wanted to steal some cars. What started as a simple theft turned into a nightmare that destroyed multiple families forever. Michael Perry and Jason Burkett were both 19 when they committed these murders. They came from broken homes, had troubled childhoods, and made choices that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. One would die in the execution chamber, the other would spend decades behind bars. Their case became so famous that a world-renowned filmmaker made a documentary about it. But here's what makes this story truly chilling. Right up until his final moments, Perry claimed he was innocent. Was he telling the truth, or was this just another desperate lie from a convicted killer facing death? The answers might surprise you. This is the story of Michael James Perry's final sentence. Before we dive into this shocking story, please take a moment to like this video and share it with others who are interested in true crime. Your support helps us bring you more stories like this one. Don't forget to subscribe to The Final Hour and hit that notification bell so you never miss our videos. Now, let's get into the disturbing case of Michael Perry and Jason Burkett, two young men whose bad decisions led to unimaginable tragedy. Stay with us. Michael James Perry was born on April 9, 1982. Jason Aaron Burkett came into the world just a few months later on July 31st, 1982. These two boys would grow up to become best friends and eventually partners in one of Texas's most shocking crimes. Both young men came from deeply troubled backgrounds. Perry was given up for adoption as a baby by his teenage mother. Even though his adoptive parents tried their best to help him, Perry was a difficult child who couldn't stay out of trouble. He bounced from one reform school to another, never finding his way. Burkett's childhood was even worse. His mother used drugs while she was pregnant with him. His father was a career criminal who abused the entire family. Jason watched his dad beat his mom, shoot her with a pellet gun, and even rape her. Despite all this violence, Jason still looked up to his father. The two teenagers met and became friends shortly before the murders in 2001. They were both 19 years old, both struggling with drug addiction, and both had given up on any hope of a normal life. What happened next would change everything. In just one night, these two young men would kill 3 innocent people. Their crime spree would shock the state of Texas and make headlines across America. But how did two troubled teenagers end up committing such horrible crimes? What drove them to murder 3 people just to steal some cars? And why did one get the death penalty while the other got life in prison? The answers lie in their tragic backgrounds and the choices they made on one terrible October night. Michael Perry's life was troubled from the very beginning. His biological mother was just a teenager when she gave birth to him. Unable to care for a baby, she made the difficult decision to give him up for adoption. Perry was lucky enough to be adopted by caring parents who genuinely wanted to help him. But even as a small child, Michael was extremely difficult to control. In first grade, doctors diagnosed him with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, what we call ADHD. This made it hard for him to focus or sit still in school. Michael's adoptive parents tried everything they could think of. They sent him to counseling with psychologists and psychiatrists. They put him in special programs and even admitted him to mental hospitals twice. Nothing worked. After that, Michael was moved to the locked section of Boys Town for 4 months. Even there, he couldn't get the help he needed. His parents then sent him to a private treatment program in Mexico called Casa by the Sea. This facility housed many American teenagers with serious behavioral problems. But when Michael turned 18, he simply walked away from the program. An older man found Michael on the street and invited him to a drug party. The man offered Michael a place to stay, but there was a price. Basically, I became a rent boy, Michael admitted years later. Michael became addicted to drugs and started stealing and selling prescription pills to feed his addiction. His adoptive parents told him he could come home if he got a job, but Michael never took them up on their offer. Instead, he returned to Texas and continued his life of crime. Looking back on his life, Michael would later say, "I had opportunity after opportunity, and I wasted them and rebelled. That's one of the reasons why I got the death penalty." Jason's father, Delbert Burkett, was a career criminal who spent most of his life in and out of prison. When he was home, he was violent and abusive to everyone in the family. Jason watched his father beat his mother repeatedly. He saw his dad shoot her with a pellet gun. On at least one occasion, Jason witnessed his father rape his mother. The abuse wasn't limited to Jason's mother. Delbert also physically abused Jason and his siblings. Jason's older brothers and sisters took out their anger on him too, creating a cycle of violence that never ended. Despite all the horrible things his father did, Jason still thought highly of him. This is common in abusive families. Children often love their abusive parents, even when they're being hurt by them. Both young men were products of broken homes and failed systems. They had been failed by their families, by the schools, by the mental health system, and by society itself. When they found each other, they became a dangerous combination that would soon explode into violence. October 24th, 2001, Perry and Burkett decided they needed new cars. They weren't interested in buying them or earning money to pay for them. They wanted to steal them. The two 19-year-olds had their eyes on a specific target: the Stotler family. Sandra Stotler was a 50-year-old nurse who lived in a nice home in Conroe, Texas. She had a 16-year-old son named Adam, who Perry knew from around town. What made the Stotlers attractive targets was their wealth and their cars. They owned a newer red Chevrolet Camaro convertible and an Isuzu Rodeo SUV. That evening, Perry and Burkett drove to Sandra's house in a truck belonging to Burkett's girlfriend, Kristen Willis. When they arrived, Sandra told them that Adam wouldn't be home for another 2 hours. This should have been perfect for their plan, but something went wrong. Perry and Burkett started to leave, but then they changed their minds. Instead of waiting for everyone to fall asleep, they decided to steal the car while Sandra was still awake. They parked their truck down the street and walked back to the house. Burkett distracted Sandra at the front door while Perry, carrying a shotgun, snuck around to the back of the house. Perry hid in the laundry room and then knocked on the back door. When Sandra came to see who was there, Perry shot her. The first shot hit Sandra in the side and she fell to the ground. But she wasn't dead yet. As Sandra tried to get back up, Perry shot her again. This time she died instantly. Perry and Burkett covered Sandra's body with sheets and loaded it into their truck. Perry wanted to steal the Camaro, but he couldn't find the keys anywhere in the house. Frustrated, they drove off with Sandra's body and dumped it in a nearby lake called Crater Lake. After disposing of Sandra's body, the two killers drove to Conroe to pick up Kristen Willis. Then they returned to Sandra's gated community. There was just one problem: they didn't know the security code to get in. So they decided to wait for Adam to come home. While they waited, Perry and Burkett came up with a new lie. They would tell Adam that a friend of theirs had accidentally shot himself in the woods and that they needed help finding him. What happened next was cold-blooded murder. According to Perry's confession, Burkett shot and killed Jeremy Richardson while they were alone in the woods. When Adam and Perry returned, Burkett told them he had heard gunshots. He offered to take Adam to find the others. Perry went back to the car while Burkett led Adam deeper into the woods. From the car, Perry watched as Burkett shot Adam 3 times, killing him instantly. Perry then stole Adam's car keys and wallet from his dead body. The two killers drove away in the stolen Isuzu Rodeo. Willis became upset when she realized what had happened and drove herself home. Burkett then drove Perry back to Sandra's house, where Perry finally found the keys to the red Camaro and stole it. After committing 3 murders in one night, Perry and Burkett went home to clean up the evidence. Then, incredibly, they went out to a nightclub to party, as if nothing had happened. But their freedom wouldn't last long. On October 26th, just 2 days after the murders, Perry was driving the stolen Camaro when police spotted him committing a traffic violation. A high-speed chase began, ending when Perry crashed the car and tried to run away on foot. Police arrested Perry, but he was carrying Adam Stotler's wallet and identification. He gave police Adam's name instead of his own and was released on bond. The police had no idea they had just let a triple murderer walk free. Under police interrogation, Perry finally confessed to all three murders. The killing spree that had terrorized Texas was finally over. But the legal battle was just beginning. After Perry and Burkett were arrested, police had to piece together exactly what happened during those terrible October days. The investigation revealed a trail of evidence that painted a clear picture of the crimes. When Perry was first taken to the hospital for his injured arm, he made a shocking confession. While being treated by paramedics, he admitted to murdering Sandra Stotler. Later, during formal police interrogation, Perry gave a detailed confession about all three murders. He even told police where to find the bodies of Adam Stotler and Jeremy Richardson in the woods. But Perry's story didn't end there. After giving his confession, he completely changed his tune. Perry claimed that his first confession was nonsense because he was high on drugs when he spoke to the paramedics. He then said that police had beaten him up and forced him to make a false confession during interrogation. Perry's lawyers argued that false confessions happen all the time when people are under extreme stress. They said this was grounds to reopen the entire investigation. Perry even claimed he had scars from being beaten by the cops, and he accused the officers of lying on the witness stand. However, investigators disagreed completely. They said Perry had given them information about the murders that only the real killer would have known. The details he provided matched perfectly with the crime scenes and evidence they had found. One of the most damning pieces of evidence was DNA. Police found a cigarette butt underneath Adam Stotler's body, and laboratory tests showed it contained Perry's DNA. When a journalist later asked Perry about this evidence, he physically jumped back in shock and blurted out, "I'm not here for that crime." He then suggested the DNA evidence was either planted, faulty, or that he had shared the cigarette with Burkett. Throughout the investigation, both Perry and Burkett tried to blame each other for the murders. Each claimed the other was the real killer, while they were just innocent bystanders who got caught up in the violence. Kristen Willis, Burkett's girlfriend, who had been with them that night, became a key witness. She was granted complete immunity from prosecution in exchange for testifying against both men. During her testimony, Willis said she was scared of Burkett and described what she had witnessed. The evidence against both men was overwhelming. Police had confessions, DNA evidence, witness testimony, and the stolen vehicles. The case seemed solid, but the legal battles were just beginning. And that was February. To make the legal process simpler, prosecutors decided to try Perry and Burkett separately. Each man would only be charged with one count of capital murder, even though they were involved in killing three people. This strategy would make it easier to get convictions and death sentences. Michael Perry was tried for the murder of Sandra Stotler. Jason Burkett was tried for the murder of Jeremy Richardson. Both prosecutors were seeking the death penalty. Kristen Willis, Burkett's girlfriend who had been with them that night, became the star witness for the prosecution. In exchange for complete immunity from any charges, she agreed to testify against both men. During her testimony, Willis described the events of that terrible night and admitted she was scared of Burkett. Perry later tried to suggest that Willis got a special deal because her father was a police officer, but this didn't help his case. In February 2003, Perry's trial reached its conclusion. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Besides his confession, prosecutors presented the DNA evidence from the cigarette butt found under Adam Stotler's body. The jury took only 2 hours to find Perry guilty of capital murder. Jason Burkett's trial came later, in October 2003. He was also found guilty of capital murder, but his sentencing phase would be very different from Perry's. During Burkett's sentencing, his defense team brought in psychologists and family members to testify about his horrible childhood. They wanted the jury to understand how years of abuse and neglect had shaped him into the person he became. The most emotional moment came when Burkett's father, Delbert, was brought from prison to testify. Delbert had spent most of his life behind bars and was the same man who had abused Jason throughout his childhood. But now, facing the possibility of his son's execution, Delbert broke down and begged the jury to spare Jason's life. "I was a horrible father who failed my son and my family," Delbert told the jury through tears. It was a powerful moment that affected everyone in the courtroom. After Delbert left, two women in the courtroom broke down crying. The jury was moved by Delbert's testimony and the evidence of Jason's abusive childhood. When they voted on his sentence, Jason Burkett was spared execution by just 2 votes. Instead of death, he received life in prison. However, not everyone was satisfied with this outcome. Lisa Balloon, Sandra Stotler's daughter, was not swayed by the stories of Burkett's childhood abuse and neglect. She said that while she didn't necessarily want either man to be executed, she thought life in prison was too lenient. At the time, Texas didn't have life without parole, so Burkett would be eligible for parole after 40 years. Balloon felt this proved that Burkett was irreparably broken and would always be dangerous. The trials were over, but the legal battles would continue for years to come. After being sentenced to death, Michael Perry was transferred to death row at the Pulaski unit in Texas. Even behind bars, Perry couldn't control his behavior. He was unruly and belligerent with prison guards and other inmates. On one occasion, he became so aggressive that guards had to physically restrain him. During the struggle, Perry tried to bite one of the officers. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, Perry never stopped claiming he was innocent. He spent years filing appeal after appeal, trying to overturn his conviction and death sentence. Perry often represented himself in court, convinced he was smarter than the lawyers and judges handling his case. Perry's legal team argued that he had been in police custody on a traffic violation when Sandra Stotler was murdered. They disputed the estimated time of her death and insisted that Perry's confessions were false. They claimed that people under extreme stress often make false confessions, and this should be grounds for a new investigation. But court after court rejected Perry's appeals. Every judge who reviewed his case found the evidence of his guilt to be overwhelming. The DNA evidence, witness testimony, and detailed confessions all pointed to Perry as the killer. On the day of his execution, Perry's lawyers made one final desperate attempt to save his life. They filed an emergency appeal with the U.S. Supreme Court, hoping the justices would grant a stay of execution. But just hours before Perry was scheduled to die, the Supreme Court rejected his final appeal. Meanwhile, Jason Burkett was serving his life sentence and filing his own appeals. Like Perry, all of Burkett's appeals were unsuccessful. Under Texas law at the time, Burkett will become eligible for parole on November 1st, 2041, exactly 40 years after the murders. In 2010, just days before Michael Perry's execution, the case caught the attention of Werner Herzog, a famous German filmmaker. Herzog was known for making powerful documentaries about complex human stories, and Perry's case fascinated him. The film became a powerful statement against capital punishment, using Perry and Burkett's story to show the human cost of the death penalty system. July 1st, 2010 was a hot summer day in Huntsville, Texas. The atmosphere at the Huntsville unit was tense as prison officials prepared for Michael Perry's execution. Family members of both the victims and Perry gathered outside the prison walls, while media crews set up their cameras to cover the story. Inside the prison, Perry spent his final hours in a holding cell near the execution chamber. He had refused to eat a special last meal, choosing instead to have the same food served to other inmates that day. Perry seemed calm but emotional as the time approached. At 6:00 p.m., guards escorted Perry into the execution chamber. The room was small and sterile, with a gurney in the center, where Perry would spend his final moments. Prison officials strapped him down and inserted the IV lines that would carry the lethal drugs into his system. Through a window, Perry could see the witness room where his adoptive mother sat crying. Also watching were family members of the victims, including Sandra Stotler's relatives, who had waited nearly 9 years for this moment. When officials asked Perry if he had any final words, He looked directly at the witnesses and spoke clearly. Yes, I want to start off by saying to everyone that's involved in this atrocity that they are all forgiven by me. Perry then turned his attention to his mother in the witness room. Mom, I love you, he said, his voice breaking with emotion. His adoptive father had died just a few weeks earlier, and Perry hadn't been allowed to attend the funeral. I am ready to go, Warden, Perry continued. Then looking up at the ceiling, he added, coming home, Dad, coming home, Dad. As Perry spoke these final words, a single tear rolled down his right cheek. The warden gave the signal, and the lethal injection began flowing through the IV lines. Perry's breathing became shallow and then stopped completely. At exactly 6:17 p.m., prison officials pronounced Michael James Perry dead. He was 28 years old. In the witness room, Perry's mother wept openly. Sandra Stotler's family members showed little emotion, having waited nearly a decade for justice to be served. After the execution, Lisa Stotler Ballon, Sandra's daughter, spoke to reporters. She said she took no joy in Perry's death and felt sympathy for his family. However, she believed that Perry's final declaration of innocence proved the jury had made the right decision. I needed to look into his eyes and see if he was the monster I had made him out to be, because he was just a 19-year-old kid at the time, she said. When he said that, I knew that he was. I knew that justice had been served. The execution of Michael Perry brought mixed emotions to everyone involved. Lisa Balloon, Sandra Stotler's daughter, felt no happiness about Perry's death but believed justice had been served. The families of all three victims had endured nearly a decade of pain, court hearings and appeals before finally seeing the case closed. Meanwhile, Jason Burkett continued serving his life sentence in prison. In 2018, his girlfriend was arrested for trying to mail him methamphetamine, showing that trouble still followed him even behind bars. Burkett's father, Delbert, who had made that emotional plea to save his son's life, died in prison on June 6, 2022 at age 66. He had been serving a 40-year sentence for child abuse charges. The case left a lasting impact on everyone it touched, serving as a reminder of how broken families and bad choices can lead to unimaginable tragedy. The story of Michael Perry and Jason Burkett is a tragedy that destroyed multiple families and changed a community forever. 3 innocent people, Sandra Stotler, Adam Stotler, and Jeremy Richardson, lost their lives simply because 2 troubled young men wanted to steal some cars. The ripple effects of that one terrible night in October 2001 continue to this day. This case shows us how childhood trauma, failed systems, and bad choices can lead to unimaginable consequences. It also raises difficult questions about justice, punishment, and whether people can truly change. If this story made you think about the complexities of crime and punishment, please like this video and share it with others. Don't forget to subscribe to The Final Sentence for more true crime stories that explore the darkest corners of our justice system.